Hello guys, today once again the Kremlin dictator repeated he does not plan to attack the countries of the European Union or NATO, which made all these countries and NATO very concerned. All because Russia always does the contrary to what it promises. Years, months, and literally days before the invasion of Ukraine, Putin persuaded they did not have any plans like that. And even after the annexation of Crimea, the Kremlin wanted others to believe these were just the green men. After months of hybrid attacks on the EU countries, I mean various cyber attacks, drones in the airspace of many European countries near their military bases, near their civilian airports, and a lot of other hybrid warfare, the European Union and NATO are awakening. And perhaps for the first time in the history of the EU, they are seriously discussing counter-offensive operations against Russia, real cyber attacks on the key infrastructure of Russia, real information psychological operations inside the Russian Federation. And I have one question. Why did you wait for so long when it's pretty obvious the war between Ukraine and Russia, North Korea, and Iran is definitely not about the territories. It's not the regional conflict. It's a big civilizational battle. And now, I believe another thing that sped up the process is these leaked conversations between Witkov, between Ushakov and Dmitriev, which demonstrate that at least Witkov is not playing for the United States. Not even Ukraine, but the United States. That's why NATO is obviously very worried. And recently they reported about 3 Russian tools followed by 2 Russian Sus executing various training military maneuvers in the Baltics, led to the need of fighter interceptors aircraft coming from Sweden and Estonia. So finally, everyone realizes we need to remain very aware and very united. And I believe in this moment, NATO needs Ukraine just as Ukraine needs NATO. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see the defeat and demilitarization of Russia, subscribe and together we will witness that. Please share these videos, like these videos, help us spread the truth. So let's begin with this recent incident, which just adds up to a lot of Russia's hybrid attacks on the NATO countries. And they, of course, included cyber attacks, drones, literally paralyzing the work of many European airports, military bases, and interference in your elections. Definitely a lot of internal conflicts are organized with the support of the bloody Russian money. And once again, the intelligence of these countries knows way more than we can read in the media. So in the Baltic Sea, where Russians are not allowed to train, they decided to train using Tu-22 aircraft, actually 3 of them, which perform different communication tasks, updates tasks, and so on. And later, they were followed by Su-27 and Su-35. So literally we had intelligence, we had bombers. Training to do what? It's pretty obvious that one of the potential targets are the Baltic countries. And finally, NATO is awakening, and they actually sent interceptor aircrafts. Sweden and Italy did that from the bases in Sweden and Estonia. Once again, Putin is observing these tricks, these maneuvers. He, I believe, sincerely hoped that he could trick us with this 28 points of the capitulation, and that NATO is weak, European Union is weak, and no one will react. But finally, the nations are awakening, and honestly, I think that I think that Trump is also one of the reasons, because for decades, everyone in the European Union, everyone in the North America was sure that our friendship alliance is forever. And now, with this leaked information about Witkoff literally persuading his Russian negotiators how to influence, how to manipulate Trump, looks very, very, very suspicious. And once again, 20, 50 years ago would definitely be qualified as a treason, which it actually is. And the number, once again, of drone incursions, of GPS jamming, of various kinds of sabotage, arsons, cyber attacks lead to this understanding that Russia is already at war with many NATO and EU countries, and one of Putin's tasks is actually to destroy NATO. That's why he put that point into this peace proposal that undermines not just Ukraine's sovereignty, banning us from joining the alliance, but also undermines the sovereignty of NATO, making it put in its status the promise to never add any former Soviet republics. I am sorry, the Soviet Union collapsed, and you, Kremlin goblin, will never be able to reconstruct this monster. You've actually triggered the collapse of your own Russian Federation, and we will witness that together. Subscribe, share to speed up the collapse of that, once again, Frankenstein called as the Russian Federation. So finally, the EU is developing countermeasures, and I'm happy that it's not some subjective opinion, but actually an article in Politico, and Politico publishes the articles that are based on the real evidence. So they think about real counteroffensive measures, which may include cyber attacks, which may on key infrastructure of the Russian Federation. Also, NATO exercises on the borders with Russia. And congratulations to the failed strategist Vladimir Putin, who wanted, to destroy NATO, but actually made Russia's border with NATO way bigger when Finland joined the alliance. And this is purely the achievement of Vladimir Putin, exactly contrary to what he wanted. Remember, he is an extremely pathetic bully, and bullies are very fearful. They are unable to act when someone is prepared to stand against them. And it was so funny to observe when during his recent visit to Central Asia, he had to pass a Ukrainian embassy, and they literally didn't know how to hide the Ukrainian flag from Putin, because perhaps it acts as, a garlic on a vampire or as a cross on a devil. That's exactly how he reacts to the Ukrainian flag, and hopefully one day we will see that flag on the Kremlin. Thumbs up. And informational operations inside the Russian Federation. I believe the EU does not have to work really hard. It's enough to tell the truth about the state of the Russian economy, so that more millions of Russians will rush to withdraw the rubles that lose their value while the central bank keeps printing them. You don't need to fake, you don't need to lie. It's enough to tell Russians the truth. So hopefully in the months to come we will see that, because of course I don't believe that any real peace agreement can be signed. The only reason why this peace proposal was developed is Putin is very fearful of sanctions, and he realizes that the newly ones imposed on Lukoil and Rosneft destroy his already collapsing economy. So they developed this plan with Dmitriev and Witkoff simply to prevent new sanctions coming. And that is an inspiration for us to ask for more and more sanctions imposed on the Kremlin until its complete defeat and demilitarization. And we are pretty successful with our drone sanctions too. Last night, another oil refinery was destroyed in Samara region of the Russian Federation, and some military units in Grozny, that is the capital of Chechnya, a republic that has a great potential to become independent, after the collapse of the Kremlin regime, and this will definitely lead to the collapse of the puppet Kadyrov regime in Chechnya. But once again, that's located really far away from the Ukrainian border, which proves with each day Ukraine has more and more cards, speaking in that Trumpian vocabulary. But anyway, it's important to see that more and more countries, more and more leaders, and specifically people in these countries understand that Putin, China, North Korea is already at war with many countries, with what they describe the Western civilization. It's not about Donetsk region. Trust me and trust the intelligences of Britain, of Germany, of Sweden. So it's good to see that NATO, that EU countries are awakening, are speaking about the new counter-offensive measures. And once again, what we have to understand, Russia was partially successful with these cyber attacks, with these informational operations, not because they are genius, but because you were not fighting back. When we fight back, we expose Russia's weaknesses. We find their weak places and we destroy oil refineries, military arsenals, demonstrate that their airspace is not under the Kremlin control, that their borders is not under the Kremlin control. So the moment NATO turns on this counteroffensive regime, at least in the informational field, trust me, we will succeed really quickly. And also happy Thanksgiving to all who celebrate. And I want to thank you for being my friends, my family, and most importantly, friends of Ukraine. This is a choice, not a simple choice, and you've made it. And when some of our leaders are in doubt or make mistakes, it is your will, your support, your words, your conversations that change the situation for the better, that return our allies, our longtime friends to this circle of nations that stand against dictatorships. And Russia is a dictatorship. We cannot give them Ukrainian land just because they are bloodthirsty war criminals. And thank you for doing that. I was really happy to see that despite all the efforts of the White House, even those people who support Donald Trump, who support some isolation of the United States, still understand that Putin and his gang must be punished, and Ukraine is the country to support. Thank you for that. Happy Thanksgiving. And I actually roast good turkeys. I'm good at cooking. And also the Black Friday is coming. That's why in our merch shop we have a sale minus 15% on everything, and there are lots of beautiful new seasonal items, including 2 calendars. And one is in a bit playful format with me. Do check, follow the link in the description of this video, same as follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Discord. You will find these links in the description too. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channels. Remember to subscribe to Anna Danilchuk too, and remember that we have a date 9 p.m. this Saturday for a live conversation. Love you very much. Thank you for being my friends, friends of Ukraine. United we stand. Slava Ukraini!